Hey folks, welcome back to the podcast. Matt Cuda here. And in this episode, we are going to look at my top 10 images of 2021. So, I realized a couple weeks back that I had not done a 2021 best of. And that is my tradition, and I don't want to stop from doing that. I do want to apologize that many of these shots you've already just seen, because many of them came from my trip to Florida in 2021. And right now we're going through that on the audio podcast. So for the rest of you, it may seem fresh and new on the YouTube side. If you are listening to the audio podcast, please click on the show notes link entitled something like follow along images, I believe. So click on that and you can see what I'm talking about. And by the way, that's true in just about any of these episodes I do where where we actually have follow along images. In other words, where I'm talking about images. So anyway, I digress. So at number 1, we've got a bird that is often confused with the pink flamingo or the Chilean flamingo or the American flamingo. I have no idea why, because when you look at the bird, it has almost nothing in common with the flamingo other than the fact that it is pink. Okay. And it is in Florida, as the American flamingo is as well. So what I like about this shot is the blue background. First of all, a clean blue background. It helps draw the attention to the subject, which of course is the spoonbill. The truth of the matter is the spoonbill, if I were to zoom in here, you can see a huge difference here, right? The bill is this massive bill. You know, it's nothing like a flamingo, which has the curved bill. This has a big spoon on it, and that is for digging things up. Not to get into a lot of biology here, but from a photographic perspective, I love the symmetry of the wings. I love the interesting greenery here in the foreground, evergreen. And it just speaks to me. I think it was over the last year, I've really gotten into this image, and I really think it's a good image. And so that's my number 1. I shot this with my Sony A7 III, 1/3200th of a second at f6.3 ISO 1000. Next image. Okay, so what you are seeing here is a mother great egret with a chick. And this chick is asking the mother for food, basically. But what I like about it is it appears more tender than most of the shots that I got with the feeding. The feeding is often very, very violent, by the way. And one is the youngster will grab the beak and just pull it and bite at it, and it's really crazy to watch. The nest here is a very typical great egret nest. Lots of sticks. It's a big nest. I don't know the width off the top of my head, but it's a big nest. And so I really like it for that. It's kind of a tender moment that's not really that tender, but it looks tender. And so I just like the feel of this. Overcast day, pretty much. There's a little beam of light here we can see just hitting the top of these trees right here. So 1/2500th of a second, f6.3, ISO 800. Next image. Okay, so as many of you know, and that follow this podcast or YouTube channel, you will know that I have a project called the Hummingbird Project. And every year I try to do something different, something unusual. And I usually will pick one for my top 10. And this year, this one won. And I like it because there's some new things going on here. So you've got bee balm. I've never photographed the ruby throated with bee balm. Bee balm is a natural wildflower, and it grows like a weed. So if you if you ever plant it, be aware it will take over everything. So you'll have to prune it back and that type of thing every year. Here we have the black background, kind of different this year. I typically don't use a black background with the hummingbirds. I am using a 2-flash setup here, not 3 in this case, because I want that background to go really black. So I've got a flash at 45 degrees from the left, flash 45 degrees from the right. If you'll look at this hummingbird, you'll actually see its tongue coming out here slightly on this shot. And that is a male ruby-throated. But I really like the image. I think it turned out well, and it'll be a good compliment to my shots. Now, this was actually taken with the Canon 7D, even though I had I believe, I could be wrong. No, I'm pretty sure. I was going to say let's find out, but I'm not going to go through all that. F16, you notice I'm getting a lot of depth of field here. I need all this in focus. Is all this really in focus? No, it's not all really in focus. You can see spots that aren't in focus. But I'm trying to get more depth of field. And so this actually, in full disclosure here, this is actually a composite. I don't often do composites. But with the hummingbirds, for those that don't know, with my hummingbird shots, I try to be a little more creative. I try to have a little more art in it. And so I photographed them both on the same day, but I photographed the hummingbird here. He was not in quite this position. So I added him into this other shot that I took also that day of just the flowers. And so we have a nice composition here, a composite image. And there's nothing wrong with that, guys. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's not like, and oftentimes I'll try to do something like this with these because it's not like it's a fake background. That's really what it was that day. These are really the flowers that were there, and that's really the hummingbird that was there that day. So it's just trying to get everything in one shot is very tricky, and oftentimes it's just not necessary when you can do a good composite. So anyway, that's that. The trick with the composite, by the way, with an image like this, is trying to get the hummingbird size right to the size of the flower. Bee balm are pretty big flowers, and hummingbirds are pretty small, but that's about right here. I had some fairly small bee balm I was working with. It's about the right size for these, but I might have gone a little smaller on bird. I don't know. Anyway, it's art. Who cares, right? That's what this is all about. This is not national. This is not. I'm trying to send something to a biological magazine or something like that. This is art. Okay, so next image. All right, it's the big rubber chicken flying across the air. No, I'm just kidding. It does kind of remind you of a rubber chicken a little bit. When you view a great egret from below, they do kind of look like that, don't they? But the reality is that I like this shot because it's a good clean background again. I like the juxtaposition of the tree with the bird. I like the wing position being wide open. I like the lighting. The lighting is unusual here. It's probably about 10 o'clock in the morning, I would assume. I may be wrong. But what you've got here is sun, and it's hitting here about like this. So yeah, I'd say about 10 o'clock. It's hitting down the left side, and it's hitting on his back. And that's causing backlighting on the wings, and you can see every little detail of the wing here. If I zoom in, I'll show you what I'm talking about. You can really see every little structure in that wing, and even how the back side of the wing. See, you can even see the back side through it to see how it's actually formed and lays over top of the other wing. You got primary feathers and you got secondary feathers. You got some down showing up here on the top, some down. So very interesting from a biological perspective, but also just detail and some nice artistic qualities going on. So I like that image. 1/2500th of a second, f6.3, ISO 1000. Oh, this guy down here, I removed him. This is a wood stork down here in the corner. I removed him from the original, or from the one of my images. So this is the original, and so I left him in there, but he just doesn't belong. He just doesn't look right. So I took him out, but he's still in this one. Next image. Okay, what do I like about this? This is an image of great egrets and her a great egret and her egret chicks. I like it because it's kind of telling a story of what we all have experienced, right? We have all had this happen, haven't we? Where our kids are driving us crazy, right? And that's kind of what's happening here, kind of. The kids are kind of driving her crazy, okay? You've got them down here begging for food, and you've got her saying, "No, I already fed you. Go away." I mean, how many times have I had a kid, begging for three more cookies? Sometimes you just got to say no, and that's what she's doing here. I like the lighting. Actually, the lighting is high. It's harsh. I had to do some, this chick here, I had to do quite a bit of dodging here on the underside. And by the way, look at the detail I was able to pull out doing that dodging with that A7 III. But you can see, when you're dealing with one quick aside here, when you're dealing with a bird that's white like this, you want to expose for the highlights because you have to. You don't want to blow those out. They're easily blown out. Well, when you do that, your background goes dark, your foreground goes dark, and the only thing left really of detail is anything white or bright. So in this case, the beak, the bird, the bills, the eyes. But the shadow drops off rapidly when this happens. I mean, you'll go from, there's not much of a gradient, in other words. It just drops off the black fast. And so you have to do some dodging and so forth. I probably even did some dodging here on these, on this greenery in the foreground, because it was, it's that, it was that much contrast. So not ideal for lighting, but when you have a white bird, you can pull it off. You can do some cool things, by the way, with white birds when they're on the water. And what can end up happening is, because you're exposing for the bird, if you have a blue water that they're wading through, it can make that blue a really rich royal blue, which looks really cool, by the way. So don't discount contrast. A contrasty day. Don't seek it out necessarily, but don't discount it as something that you can't work with, because there are times you can. Why in the world did I shoot this at 1/5000th of a second? Probably was in between flight shots, and I went over here, and by the way, I mean, you can see I'm down to ISO 400, and I could have dropped that down to 100 easily, but I just didn't for this shot. But yeah, I mean, you can't just, and I use manual. I'm a manual guy, so I turn off all the other features. So you can't just sit there and you have to be ready for the flight shot, in other words, is what I'm trying to say. So next shot. All right, I'll give you no money whatsoever, but I'll ask you if you know what this bird is. It's brown. It has splotches all over it. It looks like a giant sparrow. But is this bird a sparrow? Absolutely not. Well, how would I know that? Just from a biological perspective, there's a couple things. One, sparrows don't have ridiculously pointy bill like this. The next thing is, she happens to have, and I'll say she because that's critical, she happens to have a little bit of red in her wing. So what would it be? A female red-winged blackbird. And they'll throw you because you won't think it's a blackbird, but it is. And they're very unique in that. It's very interesting. But a lot of, well, they're not unique. I mean, several of the blackbird species typically will have a brownish female for obvious reasons, but, you know, for blending in and so forth. Great camouflage. But I love this shot. I love this shot because it has so much going on. You have a beautiful, and I mean beautiful, gradient. This is not fake. This is actually the gradient that was there that day. And beautiful, just blown out, soft background. Nice greenery, just enough to set it off, just enough to really bring out springtime, make everybody happy. I love the fact that she is just bellowing out a song right here. I mean, I think you can see her tongue kind of hanging up the top of her mouth. She is just bellowing out a song, and I just sat there and photographed her for, probably on and off for, 20 minutes or whatever. I really liked it. I did crop in heavily here. I had to. When you're photographing songbirds from your car and you're on a road or something like this, it's really hard to get super close to a wild bird without using some kind of like bird seed or corn or something like that. And so you're gonna do some cropping. I can guarantee you that. So 1/1000th of a second, f 7.1 ISO 2000. Next image. All right, we got another great egret. And this great egret shot is doing what I call projecting a false narrative or a false story. Here we have a female mother and the chick. The chick is looking up. The wing is in a stretch. She's stretching her wing. But it doesn't look like that, does it? To me, unless you're a bird person, then you'll immediately understand that. But this could very easily be thought of as the mother shading the chick from the hot sun. And so I thought that was a good, interesting perspective on this image. I also love the background. The background's nice and uncluttered. Got a great view of the nest here, kind of showing how much that goes into one of these nests. Now, this nest is way up in the air. This nest is, I don't know, 50, 75 feet, I don't know, up in the air. And so you're getting a little bit different perspective. I'm actually standing back quite a ways to photograph this, probably at 600 millimeters. I don't know if I can see that or not over here in my, I don't have that open right now, but anyhow, I like the image. It works well. Next image. All right. So what do I consider? This is open for discussion, of course. But what do I think goes into a good portrait image of a bird? And I got one word that I will use, and that is detail. I want to see detail. I want to see every feather. I want to see the eye. I want to see fairly clean background, if not perfectly clean. And I want all the attention to go right in. I want to be drawn to that bird's eye immediately. And when you come into this image, that is exactly what happens. You come in right here. Let's zoom in here. You come in right here on this bird. I mean, immediately your eye is drawn. But look how sharp the eye is. Just stunning. Absolutely stunning. Look at the detail in the bill. You can see the dirt, the grime, the little wrinkles in the material, the skin of the beak, the down here, these interesting yellow feathers and all the detail in that. The dusky just blue and rusty colors that make up the tricolored heron. Just a beautiful example of a tricolored heron in mating season. The blue lures here, I love it. I love close-ups, and some people make fun of close-ups. Moose Peterson finds them boring. I love them. I could take portrait shots all day long, but I'm a detail-oriented person. I am. Well, I tell you what. If you want to know what I am, my wife calls me a Renaissance man. And so what she means by that is I'm a jack of all trades, master of none kind of guy. So I'm just as comfortable looking at the big picture as I am the details. And I am comfortable doing a lot of artistic things. I like photography. I like to paint. I like to play sports. I like to build things. I like to go to the shooting range. I like masculine things. I like artistic things. I like everything. And so I don't have one style or another. I look for the shot that is the right shot at that moment. I look for the shot that tells the story that I want to tell. And so that is my, I guess, contribution to my little world here, or those that follow me, is that I kind of scratch my head. People worry so much about style, and, I got to find my style, and what is my style? And you know what? Your style is whatever you enjoy doing and you do it well. That's your style. You know what I'm saying? Some people worry about, will my style sell? Maybe, maybe not. Will I make any money at this? Maybe, maybe not. I don't make a ton of money on my photography. I sell it to magazines. I sell it to people that want to buy prints. I sell it to all kind of things. People want digital downloads. There's just all kind of things. But it's not my main gig, right? Again, we're going back to that Renaissance man, right? Do a lot of things decently. Maybe some things well, better than others. But so don't feel like you have. My point is not to brag about being a Renaissance man, because that's just stupid. But my point is that don't let other people dictate what your style is. Go ahead and learn from them. Go ahead and understand their style. Mimic their style. But in the end, realize that your style is your style. It's whatever you like. So if I want to take a picture of a bird's eyeball, I'll take a picture of a bird's eyeball, by golly, and I'll love it. And you can too. So anyway, wow, that was an old Matt rant right there. That's what that was. So next image. Okay, we're into what is the honorable mentions here. What I'm looking at and what you're looking at is a pine warbler. Aren't they cool birds? Beautiful yellow. Somebody will say to me, Matt, why don't you have more warbler photographs? Well, there's good reason for that. They're hard to get. Warblers live way up in the trees. They tend to love the tops of trees. Most warblers, anyway. There are locations that have more warblers than other locations. Typically, we'll see the pine warbler here where I live. But there's a lot of other warblers toward the coast and so on. But I had to put this in here because this is the first time I've ever got glass that was good on a pine warbler, and it's the winter and we've got the snow. Little known fact about pine warblers, they'll come down in the winter because they're hungry, right? So they'll come down to your feeders and they'll eat suet. So that's what he's doing. And when I saw him, I was like, what the devil? I mean, it was like hammered down, on the shutter. And this is what I got. By the way, silent shutter, guys. Can't say enough about silent shutter. If you still have a camera that doesn't have a silent shutter, try to find a way to switch at some point. I know it's costly, but you will be rewarded tenfold. It will so much change how close you can get to birds, how comfortable the birds are with you. Amazing. Anyway, I digress. ISO 5000 here. It was dark. It was a dark, stormy day. Okay, the last image here, and I want to talk about this briefly. I talked about this in another podcast episode, but I'll go ahead and cover it anyway. This is an honorable mention, and the reason I wanted to is not because it's a decent portrait, and it is a decent portrait of a tricolored heron. Excuse me. But what you have is a very unique and wild, awesome background. So you say, Matt, is that real? Did you Photoshop that in? Absolutely not. This is absolutely real. So how did I find out about this? Well, I was there with a lot of other photographers, great photographers. One of those photographers was Chaz, who was in a Canon Explorer of Light, Charles Glatzer. And I kind of got him, not cornered. I waited until all of his people were kind of winding down for the day. And he was talking to one of his other students, and he said, hey, I want to show you something. And he brought him over. He said, look at that lighting. And at that time of day, which is it's right at sunset, you can get this amazing background. So I photographed it. And I finally was able to get it. I was patient. I was finally able to get it. I walked over to Chaz. I said, hey, Chaz, this is what you're talking about? And he was like, yep, that's it. So it doesn't hurt to pick the brains of other photographers. Guys, I don't care how many years you've been doing this, you can learn something from somebody else. I mean, I could have been the best photographer in the world, but I've never been to this location. I need experienced people to tell me what shots are available, and then I can do my magic, right? So this guy's telling me, hey, check out this cool background. And I'm like, awesome. He says it's there every year. It's every year like that. So that's a good tip. You know, if you sit there and you're just like, I ain't going to talk to anybody. I ain't going to listen to anybody else. I don't care what they say. I'm a introvert. Well, I am an introvert too. Hello. Glad to meet you, introvert. And I can tell you that keep those ears open, and you don't have to be Mr. Life of the Party to be able to get good tidbits of information from people. So that's what I wanted to leave you with for a parting thought. And I wanted to thank everybody for hanging in there with me. I'm glad the audio podcast is back. I'm sorry it was down for so long. That's a long story. Maybe one day I'll dedicate an episode to why that podcast was down and all of the history behind it. It was all wrapped up in a direction I was trying to go, where I was trying to sell my art to the average consumer. And so I'll go into that one day about how it worked and why it is extremely difficult and what I really thought of the process. And we'll have a whole podcast episode on that. But anyway, thanks for watching and listening. Make it a great day and get out there and enjoy nature. Bye-bye.